but it was interesting. So it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting, and that's interesting. So this is interesting. But it's interesting. But it was interesting, very interesting. So it's interesting. It's kind of interesting. Interesting. So interesting, which is kind of interesting. 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 So interesting to me. Interesting, which is interesting. So interesting. Very, very interesting. And it's interesting. Interesting. Fascinating. Interesting thing, right? Interesting. Very interesting. So here's the interesting, which is interesting. That's interesting. Interesting. So the interesting thing is this. So here's the interesting thing about it. It's interesting, right? Interesting. It's kind of interesting. Well, that's kind of interesting.